To Mohammed Jamjoom. He is in Jordan's capital, Amman, because the Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting inside Israel and in the occupied West Bank. Mohammed, what reaction has there been in Israel towards U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's proposal to reignite these ceasefire talks?
Malene, virtually within minutes of U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and the Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman al-Thani saying that they believed that there were going to be meetings in the coming days in Doha, you started hearing reports emanating from the Israeli media that indeed there would be a delegation sent to Qatar to participate in these talks. Now, since then, we've had confirmation from the Israeli Prime Minister, from Benjamin Netanyahu, who has stated that he is going to send the head of the Mossad, David Barnea, to Qatar on Sunday for this summit, as they're calling it, that he is going to participate there and be discussing this with, of course, with the head of the CIA, William Burns, as well as the Qatari Prime Minister, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman al-Thani. Also, we've since then seen a statement from the Prime Minister in which he has thanked Egypt for their efforts in getting all of this back on track. In fact, Netanyahu said in a statement that there had been meetings in Cairo, which apparently had been a mediator in this, and that he had decided to send Barnea, the head of the Mossad, to Qatar to promote a series of initiatives on the agenda. So he's been expressing his appreciation to Egypt in getting all of this back on track. Now, what's interesting about all this is what we're hearing right now from the Israeli government differs greatly from what we'd heard from them up until today, because in the last several days, the Americans have said on many an occasion that they believe that the killing of Yahya Sinwar had given an opportunity for Israel to step back from conflict and to try to get back into negotiations for a ceasefire. But what we'd heard from the Israelis was polar opposite. It was defiance. The rhetoric that we heard from everybody, including the Prime Minister, the Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, as well as one of the opposition leaders in Israel, Benny Gantz, was that Israel was going to remain in Gaza for years to come, was that they were not going to leave Gaza until they had concluded the war and achieved all of their war aims. So there was nothing indicating that they were going to be trying to push for any kind of a ceasefire. Now, there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered. What exactly would the outlines of some particular deal going forward, what would that encompass? We don't know. In the past few days, there have been reports emanating out of Israel that perhaps there would be an attempt to get a more limited ceasefire arrangement in which fewer Israeli captives being held in Gaza would be released, and for a much smaller period of time. But these are questions that are going to have to be answered come Sunday when everybody starts meeting in Doha, and then we'll see if that will actually lead to more sustained ceasefire negotiations going forward. Malene?
And Mohammed, when it comes to the situation in Lebanon, the Israeli army has been talking about Hezbollah. What have they said?
So, Malene, there is a video that's been released by the Israeli army showing Herzi Halevi. He's the chief of staff for Israel's army. And this video was taken of Halevi as he was in Jabalia in northern Gaza, where Israel is conducting that siege on Jabalia. Now, these remarks are being interpreted differently by different media outlets in Israel. There are some outlets that have translated what he has to say, and they believe that he is saying that Israel can potentially reach a decisive end to the conflict with Hezbollah, while there are other outlets that are translating what he has said as saying that they are going to reach a sharp end. Some believe that he is saying that they are interpreting what he has to say as though there might be a rapid end to the conflict in Lebanon, and some are interpreting it to mean that they are going to potentially be able to reach an end to the conflict in Lebanon because they have taken out so much of Hezbollah's leadership. Either way, these comments are making waves at a time when we're hearing more from Israeli leadership about the potential of getting into negotiations to try to come to a ceasefire in Gaza. A lot of questions about what exactly Halevi meant when it comes to Lebanon. No timeline he mentioned in his remarks, but he does seem to be confident in stating that Israel believes that because they took out so much of the senior command of Hezbollah, that they will be potentially able to come to a decisive end in their conflict in Lebanon. Malin?
Okay, thank you for those updates. Mohammed Jamjoom there for us in Amman. Let's put some of these points to Daniel Levy. He's the president of the US Middle East Project, former advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister's office. He joins us now from London. So what do you make of these comments by Daniel Levy, Israel's military chief, talking about the possibility of a sharp conclusion, those are his words, to the conflict with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and obviously coming at the same time that we're hearing about these ceasefire talks?
Yes, look, on the Lebanon front, I think the Israeli side and the Chief of Staff, Herzi Halevi, they've taken additional losses today. They would like to maintain this idea that they're on a path to victory, that Hezbollah is defeated, it's degraded to the point of incapacitation. But what one sees every day, both in terms of the limited advances made by the Israeli ground troops, as well as the exchanges of rocket fire and the need to have additional American air defense systems inside Israel, demonstrates that that's not the case. But I don't think there is any serious prospect of a negotiated outcome in Lebanon, because the demand that the Israeli governmental side will place on the conditions for that will be too high, and the intentions, and will be unrealistic, and the intention is to continue with this. And then it's really a sense of Groundhog Day, isn't it, Malin, when it comes to what is going on in Gaza, and the flurry of excitement because an American Secretary of State says we're going to resume talks, but he repeats the same old tried, tested, failed, deceitful narrative that has accompanied us through more than a year now of hell. And the idea that one can have an even shorter respite, less Israelis get released, less time for Palestinians to not be under the permanent mass destruction, that this is somehow a formula, less for less, that will move this forward. I don't know if the Americans think that we are all idiots when they put this kind of thing forward.
Daniel, what is your feeling or your sense of what the Israeli strategy is now in northern Gaza? We've seen a real intensification of military action. Even today, we've seen attacks on one of the main remaining hospitals in the north. The siege continues there for 21 days. What is your sense of the game plan here for Israeli army?
Look, Malin, the game plan, sadly, declared openly and publicly by Israel's leaders from the get-go, was an intensification and continuation of the displacement and the denial of Palestinian rights that has gone on for decades, but in a far more gruesome way. They told us from the beginning their intention to draw no distinction between the civilian population and any armed resistance. They told us that they would impose collective punishment. That is why there were urgent provisional measures called for by the International Court of Justice months and months ago. And that is what they have continued to pursue. And now we are at a new place in the north of Gaza, where the intention is apparently to entirely depopulate that area using war crimes of starvation, of allowing disease to spread. Even the polio campaign, the prevention of polio could not be continued. They're trying to get everyone out of there. You have conferences being held by the ruling party in Israel and government ministers preparing for the resettlement of Gaza. You have the former Deputy National Security Advisor, Mr. Eran Etzion, going public in saying this is the implementation of what we all now know as the General's Plan, which is precisely this use of starvation and mass displacement and mass bombardment, saying that this is a war crime, calling on soldiers in Israel to refuse to serve. You have a petition being circulated, not mass numbers joining it, but calling from Israelis for weapons to stop being sent, for serious, not words, not rhetoric, but serious international pressure, because what Israel is doing is criminal. The Americans go ahead and announce more aid, but they keep sending the weapons. They're arming this military. They're providing political cover, narrative cover for this military. And these make-believe ceasefire talks are not going to prevent what must be prevented with extreme urgency in North Gaza and elsewhere.
Thank you for your time. Daniel Levy, president of the US Middle East Project, a former advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister's office, speaking to us there from London. Thank you.
Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.